Though Milan grew stronger with Sforza's victories, the Republicans came to fear and hate him. They saw Sforza as a Caesar intending to topple the new republic. These bookish professors and lawyers listened intently to two agitators who had returned to Milan. Two brothers with harsh words and a fierce vendetta against Sforza. The sons of none other than Piccinino swore vengeance upon Sforza. They incited the Republicans to betray him by signing a secret truce with Brescia before Sforza could take that city. This, of course, angered the condottiero. He had agreed to serve the Republic only in exchange for the city. Stifling the ambitions of a man like Sforza was a fatal mistake. Milan was prepared for the siege. Bronze cannons lined the walls and a vast militia was trained. Even the hoarding merchants sold their possessions to arm the mercenaries of the Piccinino brothers. Milan sent emissaries to convince the Duke of Savoy that Sforza would threaten all of Italy. Thousands of Savoyard troops marched against Sforza. But battles are not only won on the field with men and horses. They can also be won in a dark tent over a barrel of wine. In one such tent, Sforza met with Malatesta, now commander of the Venetian troops. Malatesta listened as Sforza ranted furiously of Milan's treachery. He knew that Sforza was not angry that the Republic had betrayed him, as much as that it had done so before Sforza could betray the Republic. But Sforza offered an opportunity for Malatesta and his Venetian employers. While Sforza hurled his men and his riches against Milan's walls, the Venetians would be free to conquer the rest of northern Italy. Malatesta agreed to help Sforza, but as always, alliance and treachery between condottieri were only opposite sides of the same coin. Hunger and disease spread in the besieged city. The soldiers left the walls and turned their weapons inward to the cloistered professors and lawyers who had promised them liberty, but at a great cost. Is it better to be feared or loved? In that moment, Sforza was both. Milan opened her gates, and Sforza lavished the people with all of the grain, their own grain, that he had taken during the siege. The grateful, if foolish, people crowned Sforza, that treacherous, conniving, selfish bastard, Duke of Milan. It was not his final triumph, but it was his grandest. That is the story of Sforza, from one who fought with him and against him. Do I wish ill upon him? No more than I would wish ill on the fox who raids the henhouse in the black of night. It does only what a fox does and cannot be blamed for it. I do not blame Sforza any more than I would blame myself. After all, Sforza's blood is in me, for I am his cousin, Micheletto. Sforza is like me. We are condottieri. We are the contract men of Italy.
I left the walls drenched in the sweat and blood of the tenacious Norman besiegers. My comrades and I usually would rush straight to the inn after a fight, but not today. My father, the heroic Michael Nauticus, savior of Bari, awaited me. I found the wizened old man staring out the window towards the enemy camp. Foul, treacherous mercenary scum. Son, the inhabitants of this peninsula have courted mercenaries for centuries. Not one bit of good it did them. Weary of discussing Normans whose nature I knew all too well, I inquired about our rich family heritage. I asked my father instead to tell me of our ancestor Panos. My father spun round, his eyes gleaming. You wish to hear the story of the family? Our Greek blood runs back generations. Nauticus, our surname, it is so because we came as sailors. In the year 869, the knight Paunos Nauticus answered the summons of his Byzantine liege, Emperor Basil II. He was to lead a force by sea to aid our ally Louis II, the Frankish king, against the Emirate of Bari. Paunos was offered lordship of Bari after his victory, but he declined, wishing to live out his days in peace. Having brought glory to his house, he settled down and started a family. The old man mused for a while, his memory slowed by wine. Louis, on the other hand, ran into trouble with the Lombards. They were not fond of yet another Frankish conqueror treading on their soil. Suddenly, a bell rang, signaling an attack and calling the city to arms. I donned my armor and rushed out the door, leaving my father to his thoughts. I walked downstairs the next morning in a daze. The battle of the previous night was fresh in my mind, and it chilled my blood. I whirled around and found myself staring straight into my father's eyes. Nothing shakes the ghost of battle like a fine story, son. Come sit down to a meal, and I shall tell you of the rebellion of Melus. The sun shone onto my father's gaunt face. He had a head of thick grey hair, and his limbs remained strong from years as a sailor and a soldier. I have donned mail since the year 1005, when I was but a lad in the service of Melus, the highest-ranking nobleman in the city. Ambitious and eager to prove myself, I soon became his best man. Melus was passionate, but his withdrawn, stealthy manner began to stir my distrust. When he invited all manner of mercenary troops into our beautiful city, I began to fear the worst. My father stood up to tend the fire. 1011. It had been 2 years since I had stood in the courtyard of Melus's castle in Bari. With the rebel garrison defeated, Bari was once again in Byzantine hands. Unsurprisingly, the local Katapan, or Lord, asked me to remain at the head of the force that I had recruited. Most of Melus's family was captured and imprisoned, but Melus and his brother Datus were still at large in the countryside. The rebellion was far from over. My father coughed and took another draught of wine. Melus sought aid from Salerno, while Datus fortified a tower on the Garigliano River. From there they gathered support and renewed their strength. Melus reached far for help. Lombards, Germans, and Apulians answered the call, eager for glory and plunder. But there was one more group whose help Melus enlisted. A new generation of Norman adventurers, forebears of the scum who attack our city as we speak. It is because of Melus that this new menace is upon us. In response, the Byzantine Emperor sent the General Basil Boyanes and an elite force of the fabled Varangian Guard to meet Melus in the field and crush the rebellion for good. The armies drew up near the river of Fanto, not far from where the Romans had clashed with Hannibal of Carthage some 12 centuries earlier. The fate of Mezzogiorno was about to be decided. Not unlike its predecessor, the Second Battle of Cannae was a massacre. The Lombards and their Norman allies were no match for Boyanes' strategic prowess and the ferocity of his Varangian troops. Melus fled the field and sought refuge with the Pope, which sent him to the court of the Holy Roman Emperor. He gradually poisoned the minds of several influential courtiers, and eventually the Emperor himself. Melus died in exile, but the effects of his political machinations were soon to be felt throughout Italy.